Hey all, Blake here with another video. And recently, around about here somewhere, I had a subscriber ask me to explain proper acclimation of fish. I thought, what a great topic to do a video on. I think a lot of people might get this wrong or might be confused about why they're doing what they're doing. So let's jump straight into the video. So to get started, there's basically two main methods that I use to acclimate my fish. And I do this for all the fish that have ever come into the fish room, so I'm fairly confident in these two methods, and they're the only two methods that I use. Basically I use them one for sensitive fish and shrimp, and the other one for your more run-of-the-mill hardy sort of fish that aren't necessarily going to have that bad of a time acclimatizing to your water. Before we jump into that though, I should explain why you never ever want to get fish that have been shipped to you. Sort of pull the bag out, say, oh fantastic, my little fish is in there. Open it up, take a good look and just say, oh this is fantastic. First of all, the water is going to stink inside that bag. And second of all, there is a chemical process in there, which is the reason that I'm suggesting these acclimation processes today. There's actually two processes that are happening inside the bag. When we have our fish and our water inside the bag like this, it's a closed ecosystem. The fish are aspirating inside that, which basically means consuming that oxygen, and they're creating an excess of carbon dioxide. This excess of carbon dioxide does two things. Firstly, it creates carbonic acid, which is going to gradually lower the pH of the water in the bag. The other thing is that the fish are going to produce waste, but without the oxygen molecules, it remains in the less harmful state of ammonium, which is far better than ammonia. However, what happens is we get them, take the rubber band off, open it up, all that carbon dioxide is exchanged with oxygen, the carbonic acid is then neutralized, and the pH can skyrocket. Similarly, that ammonium can now react with the oxygen molecules and create ammonia, which can do all sorts of bad things for your fish. Burn their gills and just, create a lot of damage.
Now that's a lot of damage!
In addition, I'd suggest that you only ever want to experience one or two forms of stress to a fish at any given time. What do I mean by a form of stress? I mean things like temperature differences, pH differences, amount of salinity in the water, physical stresses such as larger fish or competition for food and things like that, and any other stress that you can pretty much imagine. So for that reason, if I get a run-of-the-mill bread and butter type fish that I think will handle the changes in pH and whatever other minor changes might occur in my water, then I'll do what is called a plop and drop. If we can imagine, I've got my bag of fish here, direct from an online order. Got my bag, I'm really happy. It's come out of the box just like this. What I'll do is then put it straight into a tank, and you've probably seen me do this a number of times, and I'll float the bag in the tank for a period of approximately 30 minutes. Really depends how big the bag is. Sometimes if I've got huge bags, then I've floated them in the tank for over a couple of hours. At that point, I know that the temperature is the same as the water that I'm going to be putting them in, and that's alleviating one of the stresses that I just mentioned. At that point, I'm fairly confident that it will be able to handle the other stresses, which is the change in actual water chemistry. So what I'll do is called the plop and drop. Now, what I would recommend is getting yourself a large bucket such as this, but obviously we've got a small table to work on here, so we're going to have to imagine this specimen container is our bucket. What I'll do is I'll get our bucket like so. I'll place a large net over it once again. Larger net, the better, because there's less chance that your fish are actually going to fall out of the net when you place them in. I actually place the net in the bucket like so. This is actually probably harder with the specimen container, but you get the idea. What I'll do then is actually not even open the bag yet, but just hold it tightly at the entry point, making sure that all the carbon dioxide is trapped. I'll remove the rubber band carefully, and I'll just sort of untwist it here, making sure that no oxygen is going to get into that bag just yet. Then I'll get it down to the end so that there's very little amount of area there, just basically meaning that I can be more precise with what I'm going to do next. At that point, I'll tip the bag, still holding the end, upside down into the net, and I'll actually hold the other end of the bag, which will now just be full of air. At that point, I'll just let go of the end and all of the water and the fish will go through the net. Immediately that water is kind of neutralizing that carbonic acid, transforming, and there's lots of ammonia being created in there. But our fish are happy because that disgusting toxic water is out of the way. Then we take our net with our fish in it, put them in the tank, and happy days. However, this doesn't work if we've got really sensitive fish, things like Caridina shrimp, German blue rams, discus, and other things like that. So for more sensitive livestock, I have a slightly modified routine that I use. What I like to do is get an actual ammonia remover, such as this Seachem Safe here, which I find to be really effective. I put some of that in the bucket first of all, just for an example, we'll put a little bit in there, so that I know that it is in the water immediately. Then I'll get my livestock that we've received once again, just like that. And this one is a little bit easier. I'm just going to pour the contents directly out into the bucket. Now the water is going to have that toxic ammonia, but because we've neutralized it with our Seachem Safe, I'm not overly concerned about that. The main thing I'm concerned about is the swing in pH, which is actually unfortunately unavoidable. However, to slowly adapt them to our tank conditions, I do what's called a drip acclimation. What I have here is a small rig that I set up, and this is what I like to do it in. I have an air stone, a weighted air stone on one end that I place in the tank, whichever tank I'm going to put the livestock in. Now that's fed through an airline hose, a 4mm airline hose, and I like to use these stainless steel valves because once again they are weighted, which just sort of helps the whole equation. I have done it with plastic ones before, and I see that they tend to sort of fling around and do that sort of thing, which can be a cause for disaster if you intend to leave your fish room during the drip acclimation. So what I'll do is place the actual air stone in the aquarium and open the valve fully. I'll actually suck on the end. You can see it come through, so there's nothing to be alarmed about there. Suck on the end until water gets to around about there. Place it in the bucket and you'll see a trickle of water start to come out. Then what I do is I close the air. This is why I like to use valves, because you get a lot of control. So I'll just slowly close the valve until I'm happy with the drip rate that I want to acclimate them at. There's no real science behind the best drip acclimation rate. Basically, you just want to get it slow enough that your fish are going to be comfortable, but also you want it fast enough that it's not going to take 3 days to happen. Another thing that people can deal with, if you don't have a heated room or a heated fish room, you might want to put a small heater in the bucket. Keep in mind that some heaters, if they are in contact with the sides of the bucket, they can actually melt through the bucket. So maybe utilize some of those suction cups and make sure that your heater isn't actually in contact with the surface of the bucket. In any case, you want to make sure that the temperature is the same or fairly similar to what's going to be in the tank, because that's just going to create another added stress for these invertebrates. And as I said before, I like to limit it to as little stresses as I can, and this eventual pH swing is the one that I'm choosing to accept in this case. In addition, just to make sure that your drip acclimating device doesn't fall out, I'd recommend using a little clamp such as this one, so that you can just hold it in place alongside your tank, and then you can rest easy that it's not going to fall out whilst you're eating your dinner or watching your movie or whatever you're going to do. This process I like to drip acclimate for about 2 hours, 2 to 3 hours, something like that. And that's exactly why I recommend having a big bucket, because you can have overflow issues. But similarly, I found this to be a really gentle way to acclimate things like my Michelin shrimp and other more sensitive fish as well that I've brought in here. Overall, proper acclimation is just a fantastic habit to have, and it can be a really helpful tool to bring new fish into your fish room or fish tank or whatever you are choosing to keep. You want to limit the amount of stresses on our new pets and friends, so for that reason I always recommend doing this, whether you're getting them from an aquarium around the corner or a shipment that's taken a few days to arrive. Some other things you can do to reduce stresses is feed the fish that are already in any tank before you place new ones inside. Turn the lights off so that the fish think it's nighttime and are less likely to be inquisitive and peck at the bag and stress out the fish inside the bag even more. Other than that, guys, once you get the hang of it, it's fairly simple and straightforward and can really assist you to have success bringing new fish into your fish room or fish tank. Hopefully you liked this video, hopefully you found it to be helpful. If you did, It always helps me out to smash like, hit subscribe, and all that fun stuff. Other than that, I'll catch you on the next one. Thanks for watching.